Okay, people, remember a few months ago when RFK said by September they'd know for sure what's causing autism? I told you back then they better come out and flat out say what we've known all these years, that it's vaccines, because at this point it's undeniable. But here we are a few months later, and instead of telling the truth, we get Trump up there declaring that the leading cause of autism is pregnant women taking Tylenol. That's right, after decades of government gaslighting, after billions pumped into vaccine programs, after an entire generation of kids suddenly developing neurological disorders at an insane rate, they expect us to believe the real culprit is the same over-the-counter pain reliever grandma's been taking for 70 years. What do Tyler Robinson and Tylenol have in common? Well, they're perfect patsies. Distractions meant to pull everyone's eyes away from the real culprits. Just like I predicted, the pharma machine needed a scapegoat that wouldn't cost them trillions in lawsuits or threaten their entire vaccine racket, and Tylenol fits the bill perfectly. And just look at how CNN is playing their role in all this circus. Scroll through their headlines over the past decade, and even they've been hinting at this exact narrative for years. Article after article mentioning Tylenol, saying it may raise the risk of ADHD or hyperactivity. Another says it should be investigated for fetal harm. And now suddenly it's front page news because Trump brings it up. This isn't bombshell news, it's manufactured drama. They've known for years that there were red flags around Tylenol, and they knew this for a long time. Same with Tylenol's own X account years back. They flat out said they don't recommend their products for pregnant women. But now with Trump and RFK pushing this autism Tylenol link, the whole thing feels like a giant psy-op being rolled out in real time. We've got endless videos online of liberal influencers popping Tylenols like candy while they're pregnant, flaunting it like it's a weird badge of honor, which makes me think, look, if Trump was really smart about this, he'd keep this going. I know what I'd be doing. If libtards are doing the exact opposite of what I say, I mean, let's take it a step further, okay? Yes, Tylenol isn't good for you, but also shooting yourself in the head is, believe it or not, very bad for your health. And jumping off a bridge, highly discouraged, okay? I mean, it could cause serious injuries. Now, I have to give praise where it's due because during the press conference, Trump did say that if you look at the rates of illness in the Amish communities, it's virtually zero. Things like autism, ADHD. I mean, this is truly mind-blowing stuff, people. I mean, I hope people make the connection here, put two and two together. So first, Trump posts a video to his Truth Social with the caption, "All vaccines are poison. Every single one." Now they're hinting at the more big pharma poison you take, the sicker you get. Trump and RFK Jr. finally made their big autism announcement, and as expected, the media completely lost it. The White House billed this as a historic moment, with Trump standing next to RFK telling pregnant women not to take Tylenol or give it to their babies. He lumped Tylenol, vaccines, and other meds together as part of what's driving the autism explosion, saying they pump so much stuff into those beautiful little babies, it's a disgrace. I mean, credit where it's due, this is big. Now here's where it gets messy. This entire announcement was built on one single study led by Ann Bauer. Her team reviewed 46 studies on Tylenol, autism, and ADHD, and let's be clear, of course, Tylenol plays a role. Constantly feeding a developing baby big pharma chemicals is obviously dangerous, but Bauer knows how this game works. If she came out and said what her data really shows, her career would be over tomorrow. The medical establishment would blacklist her, her funding would vanish, and she'd never be published again. So instead of saying it outright, she used cautious, safe language. Maybe it plays a role, maybe it doesn't. She said, we need more research. That kind of hedging isn't because the evidence isn't there. It's because she knows there would be a target on her back. And now she's acting sick to her stomach, end quote, because Trump and RFK took her carefully worded academic language and brought it to the world stage. But here's what Trump and RFK should have done. They should have come right out and said what everyone with at least 2 brain cells already knows. Vaccines are the main driver of autism. It's undeniable. For decades, parents have watched their perfectly healthy kids hit every milestone, only to regress immediately after a round of shots. The evidence is overwhelming. Of course, popping Big Pharma's toxic products while pregnant isn't good for women at all, whether it's Tylenol, antidepressants, or anything else. But let's get real here. Gene editing poison death shots are at the top of the list. Over the past 3 years, they've pumped more experimental mRNA injections into the population than every other vaccine combined over decades. That should have been the headline, not some vague warning about painkillers. Instead, they went with the Tylenol study, a convenient red herring. It's controversial enough to make headlines, but safe enough to avoid a direct war with Big Pharma. It creates chaos and noise, while the real bombshell, the vaccine autism connection, stays buried. The CDC was completely cut out of this process too. Trump and RFK didn't ask for their data. This is what makes me think they're about to drop some new vaccines, okay? Some new and improved, safe and effective vaccines, patriotic vaccines, because Trump and RFK did fire career scientists that were there at the CDC. Hundreds of them, which is great news. RFK then cleared out the entire old vaccine advisory panel, replacing all 17 members with his own loyalists. But one good thing about this is Peter Bozo Tez is furious. Yes, the man that wrote a book called Vaccines Did Not Cause My Daughter's Autism. Something like that. I'm not even joking. This is the ultimate lunatic right here. And Helen Tager-Flusberg, nothing more needs to be said about that woman, are running to the media screaming that vaccines are debunked as a cause of autism, pushing the same tired, it's all genetics narrative we've heard for decades, even though it basically didn't exist 100 years ago. These people aren't just angry, they're terrified. Their lies are being exposed, and they know their control of the narrative is slipping through their fingers. Trump's administration is moving fast on the optics as well. They're talking about updating Tylenol labels so doctors prescribe the lowest effective dose during pregnancy, and even floating leucovorin, a folate-related drug, as a possible autism treatment, though the data behind it is old and flimsy. Meanwhile, a secretive CDC contract was handed out to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute to quietly study whether vaccinated kids are more likely to develop autism, bypassing the usual public process. Even CDC insiders admit it looks like RFK is now running a shadow operation inside the agency. And Bauer, whose study was used to build this whole Tylenol narrative, is now in full panic mode. She's publicly warning that fevers during pregnancy are actually more strongly linked to autism than Tylenol itself. It's almost like they threatened her. Deep down, she's not upset because Trump distorted her work. She's upset because this conversation is spiraling out of control. She wanted to keep the lid on slowly, not have the whole pot explode overnight. The big picture is crystal clear though. Trump and RFK have seized the autism narrative because by leaning on Tylenol itself and not flat out blasting the undeniable truth about vaccines, they've handed Big Pharma a perfect escape route. The public is being fed a distraction while the real smoking gun, vaccines, being the primary cause of autism, sits untouched. Think about all of our news feeds over the past couple weeks now. It's all been about Tylenol and autism. Really? It should be about vaccines and autism, flat out. What we're looking at here is nothing short of the smoking gun of our era. This chart exposes the exact moment the global population agenda shifted into high gear. Before 2021, child mortality among kids ages 0 to 4 was stable and predictable, normal ups and downs like you'd expect from seasonal illnesses. Then right at week 14 of 2021, everything changed. The line shoots up and never comes back down. That just so happens to be the exact moment governments around the world began aggressively pushing mRNA shots on pregnant women. From that point forward, deaths in this age group didn't just rise, they exploded. By 2025, there were about 18,565 more dead children than there should have been based on normal historical patterns. And it's confirmed now that vaccines cause this. They even admit in many of these articles that COVID didn't kill them because now they're slowly admitting it wasn't even real. The only major new factor, maternal vaccination. That's right. These are babies born to mothers who took the shots, and now they're paying the price. The data shows a 76% increase in deaths across every kind of natural cause, from respiratory failure to organ failure, neurological disorders, birth defects, even skyrocketing susceptibility to narcotics and septicemia. These aren't random accidents. This is the signature of bodies that have been wrecked, developmental processes sabotaged before life even began. This didn't happen by mistake. In 2020, the demons in charge saw the writing on the wall. The financial system was teetering on the edge of collapse. Their Epstein blackmail network of child trafficking rings were getting exposed. I mean, too close to exposure. And people were asking too many questions about Epstein, which, mind you, was in 2019, August? Yeah, just a few months later, Event 201 took place. And their carefully built narrative control machine was slowly unraveling. So they did what criminals always do when cornered. They lash out. They launched the decade of poly crisis, accelerating their 2030 agenda in fast forward. The goal was simple: kill and maim as many people as possible before the public fully caught on. This chart proves that while the world was told they were protecting the vulnerable, governments were really working together to commit crimes against humanity on an unprecedented scale. They poisoned pregnant women. They deliberately destroyed the health of the next generation. Nearly 19,000 dead children and counting. I mean, this is not a side effect. It's the strategy here. They knew the debt bubble would burst. They knew people were onto their networks of corruption and abuse, and they tried to solve it the only way demons know how: by turning the world into a giant slaughterhouse. Okay, the numbers don't lie, and the timing is no coincidence. This wasn't about public health or safety. It was about power, control, and survival for an elite class willing to sacrifice billions to protect their own skin. They knew we were closing in on the truth, so they tried to kill us before we fully expose them. Okay, take a look at this map from Nature right here. It shows autism rates globally, and it's not even close. The countries that hammer their populations with the most childhood shots are lit up like a Christmas tree in red and orange. Meanwhile, huge populations of Africa and parts of Asia, where mass vaccination isn't as aggressive, are down in the blues, okay, with far lower rates. If this were just about genetics, these patterns wouldn't exist. This isn't random, and it's not inherited. It's manufactured. Think about this for a second. Tylenol has been sitting on pharmacy shelves since Eisenhower was in office. Generations of moms used it during pregnancy, gave it to teething babies, and kept it in the medicine cabinet like it was a staple of family life through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even well into the 80s. Autism rates were practically non-existent. In 1980, you were looking at maybe one case out of 10,000 kids. Fast forward 20 years and it jumps to 1 in 150. Okay, today it's roughly 1 in 31. Something clearly shifted, and no, it wasn't Tylenol suddenly morphing into a brain-melting superdrug. What did change? The mid-80s marked the explosion of the childhood vaccine schedule after the industry was handed full legal immunity in 1986. So yeah, maybe Tylenol plays a role in making a bad situation worse, but let's be real here, okay? The spark that ignites this whole thing doesn't come from a bottle of over-the-counter pills. It starts with that needle. This tweet right here is interesting, and it points out something sinister if you really dig deeper. And it fits perfectly with the idea that Tylenol is being used as a convenient scapegoat. What Dr. Mark Galley is really saying here is that it's not just Tylenol or just vaccines, because both of them are actually extremely dangerous when put together. Here's how it works. Vaccines introduce a cocktail of foreign substances into the body, including heavy metals like aluminum and sometimes trace contaminants like mercury. These metals don't just disappear. They accumulate, especially in small developing bodies. Normally, your body's natural detox systems, specifically things like glutathione, help neutralize and clear out toxins. Think of glutathione as the body's built-in cleanup crew. Now, here's where the Tylenol part comes in. Acetaminophen, the main ingredient in Tylenol, is known to deplete glutathione levels. When you give a child Tylenol after a round of shots, you're essentially crippling their body's ability to detox at the exact moment it's most needed. On top of that, Tylenol interferes with CYP450 enzymes, which are crucial for metabolizing drugs and toxins. With glutathione suppressed and detox enzymes impaired, those heavy metals from the vaccines don't just hang around, they lodge themselves in the brain and other sensitive tissues. And maybe this is why the CDC went out of their way to demonize NAC not too long ago, okay? Now, this is one supplement I take almost every day. And think about this. Out of nowhere, in April 2022, the FDA announced that NAC did not meet the definition of dietary supplement under federal law. And their reasoning was because NAC had been approved as a drug decades ago, long before it was ever sold as a supplement. It didn't technically qualify, they say. And the crazy part is that technicality had been sitting on the shelf for years. NAC had been sold freely as a supplement for over 30 years. I mean, hospitals use it to treat Tylenol overdoses. Let that sink in. And millions rely on it to replenish glutathione, the body's primary detoxifier. The FDA never enforced this obscure rule here, never raised any safety concerns, never even hinted at there being a problem until after the mass rollout of mRNA shots, when pregnant women and kids were being told to take new vaccines that deplete glutathione. Only then did the agency swoop in, threaten enforcement, and throw this NAC into this weird legal limbo. The timing is way too suspicious to ignore. This wasn't about a sudden safety issue. Their own later reviews found no safety risk. It was about yanking the most accessible, affordable detox compound off the shelves at the exact moment people most needed it. NAC is one of the best ways to replenish glutathione levels in the body, the very thing Tylenol wipes out. Isn't that crazy? Just a few years ago, I remember seeing article after article saying, stay away from NAC. It's very bad for you. Yeah, and so is the sun, right? If people were using it freely, they'd be undoing the damage and clearing out toxins before they could take root. But they don't want that. They don't want healthy, sharp, independent people, okay? They want you sick, dumb, and weak. Easier to herd, easier to control, easier to keep dependent on their endless stream of pills and injections. This creates inflammation in the brain, a storm of oxidative stress, and neurological chaos. Over time, this inflammation damages neurons, disrupts normal brain development, and can trigger the kind of regression parents describe, a once thriving child suddenly losing speech, motor skills, and emotional connection to the world around them. Could this be just a coincidence? Maybe if we didn't have decades of data showing that autism rates were almost non-existent back when Tylenol use was high, but the vaccine schedule was minimal. It's only after the mid-80s when the vaccine program exploded and pediatricians started recommending Tylenol post-vaccine to help with fever that autism rates skyrocketed. So yeah, maybe the Tylenol narrative has a grain of truth, but not in the way they want you to believe. It's not that Tylenol alone is the cause, it's that Tylenol turns a loaded gun into a firing squad, basically. The vaccines load the body with toxins, and Tylenol disables the very defenses that would fight back. That's the deadly combo no one at the CDC or Big Pharma is going to admit to you, because doing so would not just expose one mistake, but an entire system of poison, sickness, and death that Big Pharma built. Okay, Henry Ford Health finally did what the vaccine industry spent decades avoiding. Once again, I mentioned this last podcast, but I need to get into it in a little more detail because, like I said last show, this bombshell is the biggest one out of the last 100 years. And the crazy part is no one's really talking about it. They compared vaccinated kids to completely unvaccinated kids. Almost 19,000 children were tracked over time inside the same health system. With the same doctors, same environment, the only major difference was whether they got the shots or not. And the results were devastating. Vaccinated kids weren't just a little sicker, they were dramatically sicker across the board. They were over 4 times more likely to develop asthma, and more than 6 times more likely to suffer severe asthma attacks. Autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, 6 times higher in the vaccinated group. Developmental problems, things like speech delays, learning disabilities, ADHD, and behavioral disorders were 5 to 6 times higher. Even chronic ear infections were through the roof. About 7 times more common in vaccinated kids. By the 10-year mark, the difference was crystal clear. 83% of unvaccinated kids were completely free of chronic health problems. Among the vaccinated, only 43% were still healthy. That means most vaccinated kids ended up with at least one lifelong medical condition, while most unvaccinated kids didn't. And autism, which is interesting here because out of nearly 19,000 children, there were 23 autism cases in the vaccinated group compared to just one single case among the unvaccinated. You don't need a degree in statistics to see what that means there, okay? The connection is right there, hiding in plain sight. The craziest thing here is the reason this kind of study was never done before is because the medical establishment literally said this. It was unethical, in quotes. Those were their exact words, because all children must be vaccinated. So you couldn't just have an unvaccinated control group to compare them against. That would be unethical. Think about that. Think about how cultish that sounds. No control group allowed because the conclusion was already decided in advance. That's not science, okay? That's a death cult. To make it more insane, the head of this entire study, Dr. Marcus Zervis, a lifelong pro-vaccine doctor, admitted behind closed doors that he originally promised to publish the results. But when he saw the data, he backtracked. He said releasing it would be too devastating to doctors around the world. Just let that sink in. The truth wasn't buried because the data was weak or inconclusive. It was buried because it would shatter the entire medical establishment's reputation overnight. Imagine being a doctor who spent decades injecting kids only to be confronted with proof that you've been harming them this whole time. That's why they're hiding it. It's not just about protecting Big Pharma, it's about protecting themselves from the guilt, the lawsuits, and the complete collapse of public trust. This study shattered the narrative they've been building for decades and exposed the truth they've been hiding. Vaccines aren't just failing to protect kids, they're setting them up for a lifetime of chronic illness. The only reason it stayed buried this long is because the people who claim to follow the science were too afraid of what would happen if the public ever saw the real numbers. The agenda is simple. Through repeated injections loaded with toxins, metals, and experimental gene-modifying tech, they're literally engineering a dumber, more compliant subspecies of humanity. They don't want independent thinkers. They want obedient consumers who can't connect the dots, who are dependent on the system for survival. And according to this map right here, they've already succeeded. The places drowning in pharmaceutical mandates are now drowning in neurological collapse, while the areas outside their control are holding on to something closer to natural humanity. So no, this isn't just about Tylenol. This is about the same thing it's always been about: control. Vaccines are the delivery system. Autism is the side effect, like brain damage from vaccines, and blaming a bottle of over-the-counter pills is the cover story they needed to keep the real perpetrators out of sight and out of reach. The 2030 agenda continues, folks. More Middle Eastern wars, our government officials sending billions to countries that aren't allies in any way, while their own people starve. Isn't that cool? Can't pay bills, can't afford a home, but sure, another billion for Ukraine and Israel. It's the same thing every time. Now, before I get into Vietnam's digital ID purge, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture here, because what's happening isn't just isolated, it's around the globe. You don't find it insane that all of this is happening at the same time in every Western country? Not even just Western, every country. We're watching the collapse of the old world order and the birth of something far more controlled and far more dangerous. Finland's president even admitted it outright, saying we are living in a 1918, 1945, or 1989 moment in world history. The kind of moment when maps get redrawn, nations crumble, and new empires rise. I'm pretty sure he means the world you know is ending, and no one can exactly say what comes next. Interesting he mentioned the date 1918, around the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. I guess it's a worldwide Bolshevik takeover now. Look at the Middle East right now. Israel launched, this was a few weeks ago, a targeted strike inside Doha, Qatar, one of America's closest allies. Really think about that. They invited the Hamas leaders to a place where they can talk and just bomb them, illegally, of course. Imagine if Russia bombed inside Germany or if China hit Tokyo. What would the international response be? And what was the international response to this war crime Israel just did? Silence. That's right. No condemnation, no sanctions, just, everyone just moving along as they normally do when Israel commits war crimes. Israel is now hitting over 500 targets in Gaza City as they prep for a ground takeover. If Israel can bomb a sovereign nation with zero pushback, why wouldn't Russia or China feel free to do the same? This is how international law dies. Not in one dramatic moment, but through selective enforcement until nothing is left but raw force and more crimes against humanity. And what was Trump's reaction? How weak and bizarre is this reaction right here? He actually released a statement saying, "This was a decision made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was not a decision made by me." Think about that. The president of the United States admitting that a foreign leader is making the calls. It paints Trump like a spectator in his own administration, a mid-level manager trying to calm angry customers while Netanyahu runs the show. And if that doesn't seem weird, then Netanyahu came out saying, guys, I swear I didn't kill Charlie Kirk. I promise it wasn't me, in a video. Yeah. And now more reports are coming out saying Netanyahu has been bragging to people, saying point blank, "I control the United States. I control Donald Trump." End quote. Let that sink in. The U.S. isn't leading anymore. It's being puppeteered, as we all knew. I mean, why else was Netanyahu getting his dirty laundry cleaned? Being the only world leader to come to the U.S. doing so. Okay. And what's Trump doing while Israel plays world police? In just 1 week, he called to reinvade Afghanistan, vowed to help Ukraine beat Russia, and pushed for regime change in Venezuela. And you know Iran is next. They're already clearing the stage here, setting up the pieces. So much for no new wars, right? That slogan died the second the globalists needed another front line for their empire. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is being pushed to the brink here, and when you step back, it's clear this isn't just about territory or old grudges. It's a coordinated play by the same global forces driving the digital ID agenda, the climate surveillance grid, and the financial reset. These are the same demons who spent the last 5 years trying to poison you with endless death shots, okay? And now that millions of people have said no, they've shifted to phase 2, okay? People saw through the COVID lies and more boosters aren't being administered, okay? So now they've moved on to plan B, fear through chaos. Sergei Lavrov declared that NATO and the EU are now at war, in quotes, with Russia. This just happened, guys. And while that sounds like just more war talk rhetoric, the move on the board say otherwise. Russian drones have been swarming NATO airspace with 20 breaching Polish borders, fighter jets violating Estonian skies, and drone swarms shutting down Danish airports and military bases. Denmark was forced to invoke NATO Article 4, setting the stage for normal war discussions. Same time, a Russian warship has been lurking off Denmark's coast. Its tracking signal switched off as US F-16s scrambled to intercept Russian bombers near Alaska. Sweden, NATO's newest member, is now openly threatening to shoot down Russian jets if they cross its airspace. On the western side, Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte are calling for a tougher response. Congress is pushing new sanctions to cut off Russia's war economy, while Trump is pressuring Turkey to stop buying Russian oil. At the same time, he's publicly hinting that Ukraine could take back every inch of its territory, something that would require full-scale NATO backing. In response, Russia and China are moving in lockstep, blocking sanctions on Iran and accusing NATO of preparing to occupy Moldova and launch a landing operation in Ukraine's Odessa region. The Kremlin's propaganda paints Russia as fighting all of NATO to justify catastrophic battlefield losses, while Trump claiming Russia has already lost 1 million soldiers. Insane numbers. Ukraine allegedly lost 1.7 million soldiers. How insane is that? Clearly a depopulation plot here. And it doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon. Add this to Germany's warning that both Russia and China are developing space weapons capable of blinding satellites, and you've got a multi-front powder keg ready to blow here. Ukraine, the Arctic, Moldova, the Middle East, and now even space itself. And here's where the bigger picture comes into play here. This isn't just random conflict. This chaos is engineered to terrify populations into submission. Wars create cover for surveillance rollouts, financial resets, and draconian laws that would never pass in peacetime. Okay, in less than a decade, a single private company has quietly built a surveillance empire that now spans nearly every corner of the United States. Flock Safety started as a small startup pitching neighborhood cameras, but today they've spread tens of thousands of devices across the country. These cameras aren't just in the hands of police, they're mounted on poles in shopping centers, tucked into suburban neighborhoods, even managed by homeowners associations. What makes Flock different isn't just the sheer number of cameras, it's the web they've built around them. Every Flock customer, whether a small town police department or a private HOA, can link their data together. That means a local cop in a rural town can instantly tap into cameras hundreds of miles away, even from private systems they don't own. This isn't local surveillance anymore, it's a national grid, controlled by a private company that no one voted for and no one can hold accountable. The company has been caught lying about the full scope of its reach. For years, Flock publicly denied working with federal agencies like ICE or Customs and Border Protection. They reassured the public that their data wasn't being used for immigration crackdowns or federal dragnet operations. Then leaked documents blew the lid off those claims, showing that federal agents were in fact being given direct access to local cameras through a secret pilot program. Flock was forced to admit the truth, backpedaling only after being exposed. Even then, they merely said they had paused the program, while openly admitting they plan to expand those federal connections in the future. This wasn't an innocent oversight. It was a deliberate cover-up, proving that this system isn't just about stopping cars or neighborhood break-ins. It's a backdoor pipeline for federal surveillance, often operating in direct violation of state laws meant to protect citizens' privacy. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. With Flock's network, warrants are basically obsolete. A single search can now map your entire life without a judge ever signing off. Where you drive, who you visit, what events you attend, all of it can be traced with a few key strokes. There's already documented evidence of this system being used to monitor political rallies, gun shows, and even religious gatherings. This is no longer the creeping threat of Big Brother watching from a distance. It's the death of the Fourth Amendment in practice, with all the same constitutional protections technically still in place, but rendered meaningless by technology. Now Flock is pushing its next phase, drones. These won't just sit on street corners, they'll fly overhead 24/7, recording everything, constantly feeding data into AI-driven systems that can analyze patterns in real time. They're testing this exact system out in Gaza right now. This essentially creates a privatized flying police force with no accountability to the public. Combine those drones with the existing ground cameras and you've got a surveillance grid that doesn't just monitor crime, it predicts and controls behavior. Traditional policing becomes irrelevant because the entire landscape itself has been turned into a weaponized tracking tool. The most disturbing part of all this is how they're selling it to the public. We're already seeing the narrative form. Crime rates are rising, political assassinations are happening in broad daylight, and shocking acts of violence are hitting the headlines. Look at the Ukrainian girl who was stabbed on a train while bystanders stood frozen. Look at the assassination of Charlie Kirk, where there were no drones and no real-time surveillance, and barely any security despite thousands of people in attendance. These tragedies will be used to convince the public that a nationwide drone and camera system is necessary to keep us safe. It's the perfect setup: chaos, fear, and the promise of safety in exchange for total surveillance. But make no mistake, we all know already this has nothing to do with safety, just total control. The shift has already happened. The surveillance state is no longer purely government-led, it's corporate-led. That makes it even more dangerous because there's no voting these people out, no democratic process to slow them down, and no real oversight at all. The infrastructure for a nationwide privatized surveillance network already exists. Flock lied about it and got caught and is still growing. Now with drones taking over the skies completely, they're openly moving on to the next stage: total coverage, total data, and total power. Privacy isn't just eroding, it's being erased, and they are all doing this under the guise of protecting you. Palantir, just scored a huge $1 billion contract with the UK Ministry of Defense, the same time they're rolling out the digital IDs. It's the first billion-dollar deal outside the US, and it comes with a $2 billion UK investment over 5 years, 350 new jobs, they say, and London being its European defense headquarters. They're pitching themselves as the operating system for the modern battlefield, linking satellites, drones, cameras, and weapons into what the UK calls a digital targeting web, end quote. Think of it like Project Maven on steroids. For those that don't know, Project Maven is a US military program designed to use AI to process video feeds from drones and other sensors. It spots vehicles, people, and objects in real time and flags them for military targeting. Basically, it takes what would normally require thousands of humans watching screens and automates it, turning a flood of surveillance footage into instant decision-making about who or what to strike. Now Palantir is taking that same concept global. This digital targeting web pulls all the feeds together into one AI-driven system that helps decide what to do next. So ask yourself this: if Palantir is the brain for war, what happens when that brain gets hooked into local cameras and police drones? A digital death trap waiting to happen. The same tech that runs battlefields easily becomes the tech that runs our cities. Mosley says interoperability is a core goal. In plain terms, once allies use that same system, data and targeting rules can now flow across borders. And the ways they operate in war zones can slip into how police operate at home. Even worse, Palantir says its AI now does about 90% of the work humans used to do, making 10 times more analysts who can watch 10 times the number of feeds and flag more anomalies. So surveillance scales massively without needing to hire more people. And they're putting London at the center of this. It's like a political stamp of approval. It normalizes militarized AI on European soil and makes it easier to roll out public safety and smart city projects using the same tools. The digital targeting web soaks up every sensor to track people and movements in real time. Swap enemy target for person of interest, and you've got constant logs of where people go and who they meet. This isn't just business growth like they're trying to sell you on. It's a big step towards a cross-border surveillance system that can move from war zones straight into your neighborhood. And if Palantir knows all this AI will put engineers and analysts out of work, well, what happens to those people? They're admitting everyone's going to be out of a job soon. No wonder some big players might welcome a big crisis soon, a big war maybe, if it speeds up getting this tech everywhere and also lowers the Earth's population. Ukraine and Gaza are the live testing grounds for AI-powered drones, facial recognition, and predictive policing systems. The same tech that will be used to control every city on Earth. The same elites pushing climate hysteria are quietly building a global satellite grid to track individual carbon footprints, while countries like Vietnam are wiping out tens of millions of bank accounts to force everyone into biometric systems like VNeID. It's not about Ukraine or Russia winning. It's about creating a crisis so severe that ordinary people beg for the very control mechanisms that will enslave them. At this moment, the probability of this spilling into a full global war is pretty high, okay? Because you can tell they're desperate here. They just need a big spark here. If a NATO soldier or a civilian is killed by a Russian airstrike, Article 5 kicks in. And every NATO nation is obligated to respond militarily. Even without nukes, the world would immediately be at a war on multiple fronts. And that's exactly what the puppet masters want. A world terrified into compliance, too distracted by bombs and blackouts to notice the noose tightening. War is just the tool. The real goal is a controlled world, one world government under the same digital hellscape, where rejecting their poisonous injections isn't an option, because they'll control whether you can work, eat, or even exist. And while the world burns, the Palantir surveillance state is being rolled out globally. Trump just officially announced his full support for Ukraine. Yeah, that's right. He said in 24 hours when he's president, he's going to stop the war because, him and Putin are besties. Putin will listen to him, everything he has to say. How crazy is that? Because we know Ukraine isn't just a war zone, it's a testing ground for a 24/7 AI powered surveillance Skynet. They're perfecting a mark of the beast system there. Drones, cameras, facial recognition, predictive policing, a digital prison that tracks everyone, everywhere, all the time. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what Zelensky just said. He said this in quotes. It's only a matter of time before drones are fighting drones, attacking critical infrastructure and targeting people all by themselves, fully autonomous. No humans involved except the few who control the AI systems. That's not sci-fi, people. That's what they're doing, and they're admitting it to you on the world stage. That's the plan. A handful of elites controlling killer robots while the rest of humanity lives under constant surveillance. Now take a look at this photo right here. You've got Peter Thiel, the reptilian billionaire behind Palantir, sitting alongside Alex Karp, Palantir's CEO, meeting with Israel's President Isaac Herzog. They're openly discussing tech collaborations while Israel uses Gaza as a live beta test zone for this AI-controlled death and surveillance network. This has nothing to do with just tracking the terrorists. It's about perfecting a full-spectrum control system under the banner of the Greater Israel Project. These guys aren't just building software, they're building the operating system for the future technocratic state. And it's not staying in Gaza or Ukraine. It's coming here. Palantir already has deep ties to the US government, and JD Vance, now being pushed as, a good replacement for Donald Trump in case anything were to happen, he's essentially Palantir's poster boy, heavily bankrolled by Peter Thiel himself, okay? And he is being used to bring this exact system to America. The blueprint is already drawn, and they're just waiting for the right crisis to flip the switch. And conveniently, the threat of political violence keeps escalating right on cue. Just look at what happened in Dallas recently, where a detainee was killed and 2 others wounded in a shooting inside an ICE office. The attacker allegedly left anti-ICE slogans on his ammo before killing himself. Yeah, again, can you believe that? How convenient once again, Just so great for the FBI that all of these shooters just so happen to write their exact ideologies and which political affiliation they're in and what domestic terror group they're in, Just so lucky for the FBI. It makes their job so much easier. Tragic, of course, but you have to ask yourself, who benefits? Every one of these incidents justifies another layer of surveillance, another crackdown, another step toward that AI police state they've been planning and wanting for years. It's like they've been waiting for these events to roll out the very systems they wanted all along. And if war and terrorism aren't enough, they've got another card to play if they want, climate change. Look at this idiot right here. Al Gore just announced a massive new global program using 300 satellites, 30,000 ground sensors, and AI to track pollution in real time across 2,500 cities worldwide. He says it's about saving lives, but think about what this really means. The ability to monitor every neighborhood on Earth from space. Yeah, right. Gore's system tracks 137,000 sources of pollution, identifying nearly 4,000 super emitters. Yeah, what could they mean by that? Soon they're going to label us super emitters and have one of those Palantir drones just wipe us out. Can you believe that? So first, super spreaders from COVID, and now super emitters. Soon he says this data will be updated daily, integrated into their weather apps, like it's just another forecast. At first, it sounds just like they care about the planet. But what happens when they start linking your personal carbon footprint to this network? When every purchase you make, every mile you travel is logged and analyzed. It's the perfect pretext for a global tracking system. First, they scare you with the threat, then they offer solutions that just so happen to give them total control. This is how they merge the climate policy, war policy, and domestic surveillance into one beast system. From Gaza to Ukraine to Dallas to your local grocery store, it's all connected. The goal isn't just war or profit, it's a full spectrum dominance, a world where every transaction, every movement, every breath you take is monitored and controlled by a tiny group of elite pedos. And while all this chaos is playing out on the global stage, countries like Vietnam are quietly being converted into digital test labs, places where the controllers can fine-tune their systems before rolling them out worldwide. Vietnam just went full digital dictatorship, wiping out 86 million bank accounts overnight and forcing everyone, locals and foreigners, onto their new VNeID biometric system. No facial scan, no fingerprint, no money. No apartment rental, no visa renewal, nothing. They claim it's about fighting scams and boosting efficiency. But come on, this is straight out of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset playbook. Are people this dumb? They've been planning it and put out documents saying exactly what they were going to do and even using manufactured crises to do this. The purge happened after Vietnam's officials returned from Davos 2025. Yeah, where they were hanging out with the same OECD crowd, pushing global banking surveillance. Then not long after, surprise, surprise, they cross-checked over 200 million accounts with their biometric database and nuked everyone that wasn't verified. Even expats weren't spared. Between July and August, foreigners with temporary or permanent residency cards were forced into the system. If they missed the deadline, too bad, you're stuck at the airport. Flights grounded or locked out of essential services like banking and housing. This is Project 06, guys, a WEF-approved agenda to digitize every aspect of life by 2045. It links your taxes, medical records, and financial history into one database the state fully controls. One wrong move, or even a tech glitch, and you're wiped from existence. Just like what happened to John, an American expat here. This is a story about a man whose visa renewal stalled because of a facial scan mismatch, and Vietnam isn't alone. Thailand is already rolling out its own digital crackdown, requiring biometric scans for visas, work permits, and banking. In one case, a British man had his bank account frozen for 2 months because his beard confused the system. That's right. By May 2025, Thailand even made digital arrival cards mandatory for all foreigners. Kind of crazy. All of these countries doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. Almost like it's coordinated. And kind of crazy how COVID was the beta test to condition people's minds into carrying QR codes, scanning something everywhere they go. Now we know what that was about. Matter of fact, the WEF even admitted it was a beta test on their website. A beta test for social compliance. Yeah, the Satanists always tell you what they're going to do before they do it. In Spain, a recent blackout proved how fragile this system is. 55 million people lost power, airports shut down, hospitals scrambled on backup generators, and commerce collapsed because digital payments and ATMs went dark. Imagine that happening in Vietnam right now, where blackouts are already common. Vietnam was one of the last countries not plugged into the AEOI Global Banking Information Exchange, meaning foreigner bank details stayed private. But now, with these new systems, that privacy is dead. The state will have a real-time view of every transaction, every move. It's being sold as progress, just like the 245,000 mass job firings in the upcoming 2026 gas vehicle ban. But it's really about centralizing power under the guise of modernization. Okay, for the regular folk out here, it's a nightmare. Rural citizens without smartphones or stable internet are being excluded entirely. What does that tell you? They're going to force people out of there into these mega cities, smart cities of total surveillance and totalitarian control. Small businesses risk collapsing during outages. And one policy change could instantly freeze your life with the push of a button. Vietnam is the testing ground. Thailand is doing the same thing. And what do you think is now happening in the West? If you think it can't happen in places like free America, think again. The infrastructure is already being built. This isn't just banking reform. This is financial warfare. And once you're locked into their system, there's no way out. This is the mark of the beast rolled out step by step. The UK isn't drifting toward authoritarianism. It's in it. And the same system is spreading everywhere else. Look around the world right now and tell me this isn't coordinated here. Vietnam wipes out 86 million bank accounts overnight and forces everyone onto a biometric system. Thailand rolls out its own version at the same time. Spain links digital payments to central databases. And at the exact same time, the UK, the very country that once helped inspire free speech and constitutional protections centuries ago, is rolling out a mandatory digital ID that will decide whether you can even work. That's right, the birthplace of these ideals is now leading the charge to crush them. This isn't a coincidence. It's the exact same system being deployed everywhere at the same time by the same demonic global actors. Okay. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this scumbag, is now openly pushing mandatory digital IDs for every adult in Britain. As I told you years back this would happen, he's now selling it as a way to stop the boats and tackle illegal immigration. But look at the playbook here. The government floods the country with migrants, creates chaos and resentment, then uses that very crisis to justify imposing digital IDs on everyone. Meanwhile, who do they actually go after? Not the migrants. What do you think this system is really going to be used for? I mean, over 13,000 British citizens have been arrested for so-called offensive online posts. To put that into perspective, Russia, with double the population, has jailed about 3,200 people for the very same thing. Britain has now become more aggressive than Russia in policing speech, all while pretending it's about protecting democracy. And now they're admitting it openly. Free of charge digital ID is now mandatory. You won't be able to work in the UK without this digital ID. Keir Starmer said, "Let me spell it out for you," while he did his little hand signal. You know the hand sign these Freemasons love doing? You know that temple? The Jay-Z Rockefeller sign? So right as Keir Starmer said, "Let me be very clear with you," he does that sign with his hand and says, "You will not be able to work in the UK without this digital ID." It even sounded evil. He wasn't even trying to sell it as something good for you. If you refuse to comply, you won't just lose your job, you'll be locked out of the system entirely. These IDs won't be used to catch illegal migrants. They'll be used to track and persecute patriots and dissenters. If they really cared about immigration enforcement, they'd start ID checks in London, Birmingham, or Bradford. But they won't. Instead, they'll focus on people attending these right-wing protests. Okay, that's what they're going to use it for, using these IDs to build a database of anyone who challenges their demonic regime. And once that infrastructure is built, it won't stop at employment. How long before you need a digital ID to buy food, fuel, or medicine? We've seen it before, okay? Look at Prevent. Remember that one? It was sold as a program to tackle radical Islam, but it was used to target British children who questioned migrant crime or radical trans ideology, this one post says here on X. Isn't this crazy? The same playbook is now being rolled out, only now it's automated with AI and inescapable. This is why I'm covering all of this in order for you to see the full agenda and how it's all coordinated. Flock's camera networks, Palantir's digital targeting web, end quote, NATO's war tech, Vietnam's biometric purge, Ukraine saying they're testing this drone death tech out. They're the beta test country for this new digital surveillance state. It's all the same framework. They test it in war zones, perfect it overseas, then bring it home under the banner of safety and progress. Britain was once the country that helped inspire free speech. Now they're actually rolling out a system where the government can instantly erase your ability to live if you watch the wrong video, post the wrong opinion, or refuse to comply. This is the mark of the beast, rolled out step by step. The UK isn't drifting slowly into authoritarianism, as many of us thought. No, they're full-scale authoritarian. They're already there, folks. Even the people building this system are starting to speak in spiritual terms. Peter the Reptile Thiel, unbelievable, the co-founder of Palantir, has been warning in recent lectures that regulating AI will bring about the rise of the Antichrist and a global peace and safety regime, a one-world authoritarian government. Let that sink in. The man at the center of building this grid is openly connecting it to biblical end times language. Yeah. And while Thiel spins the narrative here, painting regulation as the threat, Trump was working on the other side of the equation. I'm glad this didn't go through, but how crazy is that Peter Thiel said that, and in Trump's big beautiful bill, it included a clause that would have blocked states from regulating AI altogether, essentially clearing the runway for companies like Palantir to operate with zero oversight. So if you put that together, you've got Peter Thiel shaping public perception while Trump quietly lays down the legal groundwork. Now, here's where there's a little glimmer of hope here, because enough people caught on and pushed back, because a lot of people are saying, why the hell are you sliding that weird clause into this big, beautiful bill? Congress then stripped that clause out before the bill became law. So that's a good sign there. That tells you that, people were waking up and they did pull back a little. But still, make no mistake, just one victory is not a final win here. They will come back with something else. These people never stop. They'll come back through sneaky amendments, buried in trade agreements, or executive orders to slip a federal Skynet-style control grid through the cracks under the guise of preventing the next political assassination. I don't know. But you know how these demons work. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Britain is doing it in the open. Mandatory digital IDs, mass arrests for speech, AI-driven surveillance disguised as public safety. That's the model they want everywhere. The only reason the US slowed down is because people noticed. If they stop paying attention, the next version will pass quietly, and it won't just be in the UK living under digital slavery. It'll be everywhere. Now get this, back in 2012, The Economist, the magazine historically tied to the Rothschilds family, well, they released a cover that people now view as like a blueprint of the whole decade that was ahead. Look at this picture right here on the front page. This wasn't just some random publication. Like, they really laid down the groundwork. They showed you the blueprint right there. They put out this imagery like this right here to let you know exactly what's coming. Conspiracy watchers, okay? Pay close attention right here. The cover itself was a chaotic depiction of hell, with world leaders like Obama and Merkel being dragged through a fire, a river labeled with sins like greed and envy, devils hunched over computers, and symbols scattered everywhere. I mean, you got a hammer and sickle here and collapsing buildings over there. Just signs of the total chaos, it looks like. Looking back, it's actually pretty wild how all of this unfolded over the past decade. Climate change imagery front and center. Now the tool used to justify sweeping global policies. A rising China looming in the background, just as they surge to economic dominance later. Demons at computers that look eerily like today's AI-driven surveillance and censorship. Bankers headed straight for destruction. A perfect mirror of today's debt crisis, central bank digital currency rollouts, and weaponized finance. Even the hammer and sickle fits perfectly here with the rise of global Bolshevism, global communism disguised as green policies and ESG mandates. At the time, it was just whatever, holiday cartoon on front page right here. But looking back, it does read like predictive programming, right? This is exactly how they telegraph their future plans in plain sight. The devil got to let you know what they're doing. Knowing the Rothschilds' influence over banking, governments, and media, it feels less like satire and almost like they're flexing it. A warning about the hell they were about to unleash on the world. Now we got to get into this Charlie Kirk insanity. I've never seen so many theories and so much infighting wrapped around a single event. Ballistics guys on YouTube, military snipers, gun nerds, all arguing whether this was even physically possible and what direction the shot came from, what caliber was used. The one thing they all seem to agree on is it wasn't a 30-06, what we've been told. Early on, a lot of people, including myself, knew the round didn't just enter his neck, so there needed to be a different theory here. There's no way that was an entrance wound. So a few people that were body armor experts were saying a bullet must have struck the plate near the top of the armor, fragmented, and then the pieces ripped through his throat and up towards his head. That would have at least explained why the entrance wound was so large and messy, but that's now confirmed not true. He wasn't wearing any body armor, no plate at all. Under his shirt, reports say there was no plate, no body armor, nothing between him and that round, which means we're back to the core problem here. A high-powered 30-06 hunting round, still at near full velocity, supposedly entered his neck and just stopped right under his skin. No exit wound, no fragmentation trail. Either the laws of physics took the day off, or the story we've been told is completely false. And then you got the truther side that are all in a civil war now. The everything is a hoax crowd, fighting with the staged event crowd, fighting with the false flag crowd, fighting with the Charlie crossed the wrong people crowd. I mean, that has to be a psy-op in itself. Half these people must be bots in the comments working for Mossad trying to get people to fight one another. Some swear it's AI. Other people swear it's CGI. Others swear it's a Hollywood bodysuit hooked up to a squib device. And now all those people are arguing with he was just a hologram people. Okay? The camera behind him wasn't a camera. It was a holographic projection device. Good God, get your stories in order. Which one is it? This is like living inside of the mind of a schizophrenic for a day. Someone even tried to send me a video confirming it's been a hoax. It was a YouTube video, which I was forced to sit through ads during. Ads during a YouTube video. Do you know what that means? Yeah, this guy was definitely telling the truth on YouTube, trying to push the "it was a hoax" BS with his channel monetized. Mind you, I have enough watch hours now on YouTube to get my channel monetized. What do you think they told me? They sent me an email saying my content is extremely harmful for viewers and they will never monetize me. I can never get monetized on YouTube, but these people talking about how it's all a hoax, the real truthers, can be monetized on YouTube and get ad revenue? Make it make sense, people. So instead of drowning in all this BS, all this noise, let's strip it back and start with what we actually know. Charlie Kirk's relationship with some of his biggest backers fell apart in the weeks before his death. One of his top donors, billionaire Robert Shillman, who had long bankrolled pro-Israel and anti-Muslim causes, suddenly ended his financial support for Turning Point USA just days before the shooting. Now, who is this man, you say? Well, he is a Jewish-American Zionist tycoon who owns the Cognex Corporation, which produces machine vision systems, sensors, and industrial AI readers, end quote. This is on a website here called Project Nemesis. And yes, his name is literally Shillman. Yeah. His money has been key to building Kirk's organization. But many reports are coming out saying tensions grew as Kirk began giving a platform to critics of Israel and pushing back on demands from very powerful donors. At a private dinner on September 6, Shillman reportedly announced he would no longer fund Kirk and would instead direct his money to groups more reliably in line with Netanyahu's agenda. This split didn't happen in isolation. In the lead up to his campus tour, Kirk was facing near constant calls, meetings, and lobbying efforts from pro-Israel figures trying to keep him aligned with their talking points. There was even a private gathering in the Hamptons where attendees pressured Kirk to stay on message. He refused to drop speakers like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene from upcoming TPUSA events, a decision that upset donors and activists like Laura Loomer, who publicly criticized him. In the final days, Zoom calls were being held to coach Kirk on how to respond to tough questions, including one call less than a day before he was killed. A rabbi, Pesach Walicki, said he spoke with Kirk almost daily to influence his messaging, even arranging for him to join a WhatsApp group for ongoing communication during his tour. Kirk agreed, but that group was never used. After his death, Netanyahu released 2 separate statements denying any involvement. Shillman declined to comment and abruptly ended calls with reporters. What remains clear here is that Kirk's last weeks were marked by mounting tension with the very network that had helped build his career. Charlie Kirk's fall from grace wasn't just political, it was personal, messy, and dripping with irony. His biggest financial backer, Jewish billionaire Robert Shillman, yanked the money plug just days before Charlie Kirk was killed. For years, Shillman had poured millions into Turning Point USA, molding it into a pro-Israel, neoconservative machine. But that loyalty came with invisible strings, and Kirk eventually got tangled in them. He wanted to play the America First guy, while Shillman wanted him parroting talking points straight out of Tel Aviv. The final straw, Kirk refused to blacklist Tucker Carlson and a few others who weren't exactly waving the Netanyahu fan club banner. Rumor has it Bibi himself tried to reel Kirk back in, even inviting him on what people are calling a re-education trip to Israel. Remember when Elon Musk was forced to go on one of those? Yeah, that's probably why they didn't kill Elon Musk. He took the trip. He touched the wall. Kirk turned it down, which probably didn't earn him any new friends in high places. Meanwhile, Shillman wasn't just funding Kirk, he was sprinkling his influence across a whole roster of familiar names. Tommy Robinson, Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, the entire Daily Wire squad, and more. Here's where things get even darker. It turns out Charlie wasn't just throwing out hypotheticals about a stand-down order, there's now testimony backing it up. An Israeli soldier from the Golani Brigade, Shalom Shitrit, has gone gone public saying that on the morning of October 7th, his unit was ordered to halt all routine patrols along the Gaza border for nearly 4 hours. That exact window from before until mid-morning lines up perfectly with when Hamas launched their attack. Sheetrit himself lost a leg that day when his outpost was overrun, and he swears the command came from higher up the chain of command, not some fluke or miscommunication. At the same time, reports are surfacing that Israel's government was funneling $30 million a month to Hamas through Qatar, supposedly for humanitarian purposes. Put those two facts together, Israeli cash flowing to Hamas while troops are told to stand down, and the whole thing starts to look more like a controlled demolition of national security, a clear false flag in order to advance the Greater Israel Project. Charlie wasn't just hinting at this, he said it directly on a podcast. He mentioned he looked at the most militarized border on earth being left wide open, the political chaos inside Israel, and Netanyahu's sudden rise from scandal-plagued pariah to wartime savior, and he dared to suggest it wasn't an accident. He didn't need to spell it out. Anyone with pattern recognition could connect the dots here. Someone on the inside wanted October 7th to happen. When you line that up with Shulman cutting off funding days before the assassination, the whole thing reads like a warning to anyone else who might step out of line. If you question the script, you're done. Remember what someone said months back, that if Israel wanted to take out Charlie Kirk, they would do so at an open-air event and made sure everyone see. This guy here posted this on Twitter 1 month before Kirk was killed. And not long after Kirk's death, Ben Shapiro allegedly dropped a cool $1 million into Turning Point USA, dramatically declaring, "We're going to pick up the blood-stained microphone where Charlie left it." Subtle, right? But the weirdness doesn't stop there. Turns out Charlie's ties to Trump weren't just professional, they were practically woven into his family tree. His wife, Erica, won Miss Arizona USA back in 2012, at a time when Trump still owned the Miss Universe pageants. And Charlie's dad, Robert W. Kirk, an architect whose firm literally helped design Trump Tower. So yeah, the Kirk-Trump connection goes back decades, long before Charlie became the conservative golden boy. Crazy part is here, Erica Kirk has denied ever being in pageants on a podcast, which is odd considering there are pictures of her wearing the crown. Why lie about something like that unless there's more to the story? And oh, there's more. Erica wasn't just a beauty queen. She ran multiple nonprofits, including one called Romanian Angels, which was supposed to be a feel-good charity for orphans, but locals in Romania claimed kids were disappearing, and people started whispering about organ trafficking tied to Israel and other undisclosed islands. The group was allegedly asked to leave the country back in 2011, though no official paper trail confirms it. Some Romanian news outlets reported on the scandal, but authorities never brought charges. Erica's father also has his own interesting resume here, former Department of Defense work and chairing Raytheon's Israeli division. So now you've got both of Erica's parents deep in Zionist circles, while Erica herself is running orphanages accused of human trafficking? Totally normal, right? Makes you wonder if she set up Kirk to get killed so she can take over Turning Point USA. Yeah, Shillman got a new shill woman. And just when you think the whole thing couldn't get any more tangled, here comes Erica's family business right here in 2020, an interview back when she was still going by Erica Frantsev. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Erica Frantsev. She casually mentioned that her family relocated to Arizona because her mom was getting involved with the government. Homeland Security, Department of Defense, just normal dinner table conversation. Dig a little deeper and you find out the family company AZ Tech International isn't just some mom and pop shop. They've got a federal contracting set up, complete with all the official alphabet soup. CAGE codes, cage codes, DUNS numbers, procurement identifiers, the works. Their address traces back to Dana Point, California, while the Scottsdale, Arizona location handled actual DoD contracts. Over the span of 2 decades, records show around $2.6 million in Department of Defense contracts spread across 8 different projects. That's not a side hustle, that's serious defense work. Their website openly boasts about helping government agencies like the DoD and Department of Energy with project management payment solutions and other jargon only Beltway insiders could love. It even highlights their compliance with Pentagon rules on program management and tracking systems, the kind of stuff you'd need if you're working deep inside military industrial operations. So while Erica's out front talking about faith-based charities and saving the children, her family is literally running a defense contractor with long-term government ties. It's a strange mix of, pageants, orphanages, and Pentagon contracts. But somehow it all circles back to the same sphere of influence that surrounded Charlie right up until the moment he was taken out. And now, let's talk about a strange film here, I'm sure many of you know this, from 1998, that's now not looking like fiction at all. Straight up predictive programming here. Nicolas Cage's Snake Eyes, a movie most people barely remember, is back in the spotlight again thanks to some downright eerie connections to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The film opens with a character named Charles Kirkland being assassinated by a single shot to the neck. Sound familiar? Basically, Charlie Kirk's exact fate. In the movie, it happens during a heavyweight boxing match, a staged and scripted event built entirely on deception. The fighter who takes a dive in the match is named Lincoln Tyler. And in the real world case, the alleged shooter is Tyler Robinson. Now here's where it gets pretty weird. In Masonic tradition, a Tyler is the guard who stands at the entrance of the lodge with a drawn sword, keeping out outsiders and protecting secret rituals. Think of him as a ceremonial executioner. In Snake Eyes, Lincoln Tyler isn't just a fighter, his nickname is literally the Executioner. The date of the fight in the movie? September 10th, the same exact date Charlie Kirk was gunned down. And just to add another layer of symbolism, 2025 is the year of the snake on the Chinese zodiac calendar. Hollywood loves its symbolism, but this is starting to look a little too perfect. And the craziest part here, the movie was filmed at the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. Yes, Donald Trump's own casino. Even weirder, one of the characters, Gilbert Powell, was literally based on Trump, which IMDb openly confirms. So now we've got a Trump building, a Trump-inspired character, and in real life, Trump was one of Charlie's closest allies. The movie poster makes it creepier still. Nicolas Cage is pictured holding his hands in a very distinct triangle gesture, the same one Trump and Charlie Kirk had been photographed making at events. That's not just a random pose, people. That's a calling card. That's letting you know the signal right here. What the hell is going on? The plot itself revolves around a dirty arms deal involving Israel, and the scapegoat used to take the blame is a Palestinian terrorist. So the movie is about political assassinations, cover-ups, and a shadowy Israeli arms deal at the heart of it all. Sound familiar? Was the film like a script meant to play out later, like an Economist magazine? Or even a warning? And on the movie poster, believe everything except your eyes. Back in 1998, it was just a catchy line for a thriller. I mean, today it does feel like mockery, a taunt, almost like they're daring us to see what's right in front of us and still look away. This all fits perfectly into what predictive programming really is. They plant storylines in popular media to condition the public so when similar events happen later, they're easier to accept. The groundwork has already been laid. It's like rehearsal for reality. We've seen it before. The Simpsons famously predicted countless events years after they happened. I mean, the pilot episode of The Lone Gunman, which aired months before 9/11, showed a plane being hijacked and flown toward the World Trade Center. TV shows like 24 trained audiences to accept endless surveillance and government overreach as normal. This is what they do. They normalize it on a screen, then they make it happen in real life, so nobody blinks an eye. Look at Snake Eyes through that lens, and the coincidences really pile up fast here. A movie shot at Trump's casino with a Trump-like character, a hero named Charles Kirkland, a fighter named Tyler, the Executioner, an Israeli arms deal cover-up, and a pivotal scene taking place on September 10th, the very day Charlie Kirk was shot, all unfolding in the year of the snake. At a certain point, I mean, you gotta say, coincidences just feel like choreography. Hide the truth in plain sight, wrap it in fiction, and laugh at how the public dismisses it all as just a movie. Believe everything except your eyes, people. Now, Erica is stepping up as CEO of Turning Point USA. She addressed the accusations about her charity, brushing them off as baseless rumors fueled by social media. No official investigations, no charges, just a cloud of suspicion that never goes away. Then at Charlie's funeral, she gave a tearful speech about forgiving Tyler Robinson, the 20-year-old accused of pulling the trigger, which would be easy to do if he wasn't the killer, actually. She said Charlie would have chosen love over hate, and that's why she forgave the killer in Christ's name. People are also saying she threw up the devil horns right in front of Trump at the memorial, but in sign language, that does mean I love you if you look it up, so I don't make too much of it. Would be crazier if she threw up the Jay-Z Rockefeller sign. Now that would be crazy. And the Charlie Kirk event just got so outrageous that it reaches comical levels here, okay? The narrative has shifted from shady donor drama and Zionist backroom deals to something straight out of a Marvel origin story. According to a new report, Charlie Kirk's surgeon is now calling him a literal man of steel. The doctor claims it was nothing short of a miracle that the bullet which struck Charlie didn't exit his body and hit anyone standing behind him. The surgeon said this wasn't your average bullet either. It was fired from a vintage German-made Mauser rifle, the kind of round that takes down moose and elk, 30-06, without a second thought, okay? But every normal rule of ballistics says it should have went straight through him and kept on going, potentially killing bystanders too. But instead, the bullet allegedly slammed into Charlie's superhuman bone density, stopped cold in his tracks, and was later found sitting just under his skin. A Turning Point spokesman even said the doctor was blown away by Kirk's impressive bone density, comparing him to Superman, and saying that even in death, Charlie somehow saved lives by absorbing the round like a human Kevlar vest. The whole story has gone from political thriller to comic book absurdity. First, we were told this was a lone gunman with a Mauser and a grudge. Now it's morphing into a messianic fable about Charlie's magical bones performing battlefield miracles. And that's when you just have to laugh at the story, okay? Why can't you just trust the science, people? Charlie's man of steel bones didn't just stop the bullet, they humiliated it. That 30-06 round slammed into his mutant Wolverine skeleton, shattered into cosmic dust, and begged for forgiveness before settling quietly under his skin. I mean, this is just absurd. Another miracle bullet, right? Back in 1963, the government had to invent one of the most ridiculous fairy tales in modern history just to hold their story together. The infamous magic bullet theory. It wasn't just a theory, it was a narrative life raft for the entire lone gunman story. If they didn't sell it, the whole thing would collapse. They needed a magic bullet. JFK was shot riding through Dallas, Texas, with Texas Governor John Connally sitting right in front of him. Witnesses reported hearing 3 shots total, and both men were hit almost simultaneously. The problem, well, there wasn't enough time for Lee Harvey Oswald to work the bolt on his cheap Italian rifle, re-aim, and fire again that quickly. The Warren Commission had painted themselves into a corner. Either admit there were multiple shooters, which meant a conspiracy, or rewrite the laws of physics. And rewriting physics is a government specialty, as we know, look at 9/11. When the terrorist passport magically survived while 2 massive steel towers literally disintegrated into dust, and a third building turning to dust as well, to which wasn't hit by anything. Or when bullets grow wings, like in the JFK shooting, and seem to turn corners. And now we got another trust the science moment. Charlie Kirk's neck is made of vibranium, the same substance Captain America's shield is made out of, stopping a 30-06 round like he's a superhero. Another miracle. So here's the bedtime story they fed to the American public. A single bullet enters JFK's upper back near his shoulder, exits through his throat, keeps flying forward like a heat-seeking missile, strikes Connally in the back, shatters one of his ribs, exits his chest, blasts through his right wrist, exits again, and finally parks itself neatly in his left thigh. 7 wounds, 2 men, 1 bullet. And when they found this magic piece of evidence later, it was lying on a hospital stretcher in perfect condition. No deformation, no mushrooming, no fragmentation. It looked like it had just been pulled out of the box at the ammo shop. Ballistics experts called it impossible. Connolly himself publicly stated he was certain he'd been hit by a different bullet altogether, but the Warren Commission didn't care. They needed that lone shooter because without it, the entire narrative collapsed. The whole theory became the foundation of the official JFK narrative. If this bullet didn't behave the way they claimed, then there were multiple shooters, and if there were multiple shooters, there was a cover-up at the highest level of government. That's why the bullet had to be magic. It wasn't about science, it was about control. And so they told the public, trust us, it's magic. And half the country just accepted it and went back to watching TV, while the other half spent decades trying to figure out what really happened. Fast forward 62 years later, and surprise, surprise, they're running the same con again, only this time it's been updated for the modern era. Instead of bullets zigzagging midair like some kind of demonic boomerang, we're told it defied physics by stopping cold inside Charlie Kirk's neck. The official story goes like this. A lone gunman named Tyler Robinson, a random 22-year-old with no elite sniper training, somehow made a perfect shot from 130 yards away using a vintage German Mauser rifle chambered in .30-06. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with guns, a .30-06 is a powerhouse cartridge designed to drop moose and elk, to punch through dense bone and muscle and still keep going. At 130 yards, it's nearly at full velocity, okay, carrying enough energy to tear through a human body like paper. At that distance, the round is still traveling at about 2,700 feet per second. Try to wrap your head around how fast it would have been going when it entered Charlie's neck. If you shoot someone in the neck with a .30-06, there would almost always be a catastrophic exit wound, and that bullet is going to keep traveling with deadly force, probably hitting anything behind the target. That's not a theory, that's what this round was literally built to do. But in Charlie Kirk's case, we're expected to believe that this moose killer round, okay, this elephant killer round, some people call it, politely entered his neck, then stopped. No exit wound, no fragmentation, no bone-shattering explosion. The surgeon who worked on Kirk admitted point blank by every single rule of ballistics the round absolutely should have gone through, end quote. And what was the explanation? Did they show forensic evidence? Ballistic data? Nope. They went back to the same move the Warren Commission used in 1963. They called it a miracle. A Turning Point USA spokesman even told the media that Charlie Kirk had impressive bone density, going so far to suggest he was basically a real-life man of steel, as if Superman himself had taken the shot and saved the day by heroically absorbing the bullet. Sound familiar? JFK had his magic bullet, now Charlie Kirk has his magic bullet. Different toilet, same ish. The scam is the same. Instead of dealing with hard questions, they hand you a story that defies reality and expect you to smile and clap. The problem is, when you start looking at the numbers, the miracle falls apart. The probability of a high-powered .30-06 round entering a human neck at nearly full velocity and failing to exit is so astronomically low, it's basically zero. Unless this was a different round, okay? Maybe a 22. Maybe some advanced smart dust tech they used to kill Charlie Kirk, using some kind of miniature drone. I don't know, but I have to cover that a little later. Maybe that theory is more plausible here. You'd have a better chance of winning the lottery twice while being struck by lightning and bitten by a shark at the exact same time. That's how rare this scenario is. I actually had to look up the math. Okay, I looked up the chance of this actually happening, and no joke, it says 1 in 10 million. Think about that. These are the odds we're dealing with here. A .30-06 round directly into the neck at 130 yards and not leaving an exit wound. Just sitting right under the skin. The official story isn't just unlikely, it's statistically absurd. This is why every gun expert you can find on YouTube, military people, ballistics experts, don't believe he was hit with a .30-06. The only possibility would have been if he was wearing some kind of steel plate under his shirt and the bullet ricocheted. That's why I brought it up last show. But we're now finding that he wasn't wearing a vest. So what does that tell you? People are screaming that this is a hoax. And you know what? I have to say this. This is where I'll give that crowd a little credit here, because I'm not saying Charlie faked his own death with a Hollywood squib device, but if you're strictly weighing probabilities, it is mathematically more plausible that the entire event was staged than that this bullet behaved the way they claim. That's how ridiculous the narrative has become. A moose killer round magically stopped inside a man's neck without exiting is less believable than a fully orchestrated setup. In other words, this isn't a miracle of physics, it's a miracle of propaganda. And then you start looking at the pattern around the evidence itself. The body was just whisked away, in 24 hours, embalmed at lightning speed, and Erica was told not to view it due to severe neck trauma, in quotes. The autopsy, sealed up tight, no open casket, no clear footage of the moment of impact, despite the fact that this was a packed event full of smartphones and cameras. Anything you'd expect to see if this was a clean, transparent investigation is missing, while everything you'd expect from a controlled narrative is front and center. It's the exact same playbook they used with JFK's body, the Vegas shooting autopsies, and Epstein's so-called suicide. Hide the physical evidence, feed the public emotional talking points, and shout down anyone who questions the story. When you step back, the parallels are just undeniable. In 1963, the magic bullet theory existed to prop up the lone gunman lie and keep this story neat. Today, Charlie Kirk's miracle bullet exists for the exact same reason. No exit wound means no messy questions about bullet trajectory. No bystanders injured, no complications for the official narrative. The public gets a nice tidy myth about Charlie's heroic bones, stopping the shot and saving lives, while the ugly questions are quietly buried. The truth doesn't need to be disproven, it just needs to be drowned out by a miracle story and a tearful funeral speech. But here we are again, decades later, of the JFK magical bullet, watching history repeat itself. Back then, they told us a single bullet bent space-time. Now they're telling us a bullet built to kill a 1,000-pound moose was defeated by Charlie Kirk's skeleton. The only real magic isn't the bullet. It's how easily they manipulate public perception, the same way they did in 1963. They're daring you to believe everything except your own eyes. A touching sentiment, though some might say it's a little too poetic when your husband's just been gunned down under extremely shady circumstances. When you put all this together, the billionaire donor drama, the Zionist pressure campaigns, the Trump family ties, the shadowy orphanage allegations, it paints a picture that is just so far-fetched, it's almost designed to cause absolute chaos within many different communities. And now Erica, with all her baggage, is running the very empire her husband built, while the same powerful forces that turned on Charlie are still very much in power. And that's where I'm going to leave it, folks. This is getting way too long. The editing is going to be brutal. This is like a 2-hour show here. I got to edit it down. And that's where I'm going to leave it, folks. If you like what I do here, if you want to support this channel, it is greatly appreciated. You hit those links in the description. 4 ways to support crypto people out there. My wallets are in the description of this video. If you guys want to send me cool mail, PO box is in the description of this video. E-transfer links, PayPal links. Please become a monthly subscriber on Patreon or Subscribestar. It will mean the world to me. Without your support, this does not carry on. So I need your support more than ever. And also, if you want to purchase the Eyes Wide Open coffee, organic coffee from Gustavus, Alaska, you will love it. It's my favorite. Please click those links in the description, folks. Until next week, until next time, this is Steve Eyes. You're on the Eyes is Watching channel. Signing off.